At exactly 3:42 p.m., Representative Chip Roy placed an 87-page document binder on the witness table with a thud that echoed through the House Judiciary Committee chamber. The Texas Republican then asked the question that would destroy Kash Patel's confirmation. Director Patel, can you explain why the FBI spent $847,000 on a single consulting contract that produced 0 deliverables? The hearing room fell silent. Patel's confident expression flickered. Everyone recognized what was happening. Roy, the Freedom Caucus's most meticulous fiscal warrior, had come prepared with documentation that would systematically dismantle the FBI director nominee's credibility, one receipt at a time. Chip Roy wasn't like other congressmen. The former federal prosecutor and chief of staff to Ted Cruz had built his reputation on obsessive preparation and constitutional precision. While other members grandstand with rhetoric, Roy showed up with spreadsheets, statutory citations, and documentary evidence. His colleagues called him the accountant with a law degree. His targets called him relentless. For 6 months, Roy's staff had been analyzing FBI expenditure records obtained through Congressional Oversight Authority. What they found was a pattern of wasteful spending, questionable contracts, and financial management so loose it bordered on negligence. The 87-page binder represented hundreds of hours of forensic accounting, cross-referenced receipts, and documented fiscal abuse. And Kash Patel had no idea it was coming. The hearing had been in session for 4 hours, covering standard confirmation topics. Republican members asked friendly questions about FBI reform priorities. Democratic members raised concerns about politicization. Patel had navigated the questioning with practiced confidence, deflecting criticism with vague promises about efficiency and accountability. Then Roy's turn came. The Texan didn't waste time with pleasantries or set-up questions. He opened his massive binder with the methodical precision of someone about to present evidence in a criminal trial. Director Patel, you've testified extensively today about your commitment to fiscal responsibility at the FBI. You've promised to eliminate waste, improve efficiency, and ensure taxpayer dollars are spent appropriately. Is that an accurate summary of your testimony? Patel nodded, seeming relieved to address what appeared to be a friendly Republican question about government efficiency. Absolutely, Congressman. The FBI must be good stewards of taxpayer resources. That's a core priority of mine. Good stewards, Roy repeated, his Texas drawl carrying an edge of prosecutorial skepticism. Let's examine that claim using actual FBI expenditure data. He turned to page 1 of his binder with deliberate precision. Page 1, line item 47. August 2023. The FBI paid $847,000 to a consulting firm called Strategic Solutions Group for what's described as organizational assessment and optimization recommendations. Are you familiar with this contract? The specificity of the question caught Patel off guard. Most congressional questions were general enough to deflect with talking points. Roy had just asked about a specific line item from a specific month, with a specific vendor and a specific dollar amount. I would need to review the specific contract details. I have them right here, Roy interrupted, pulling out a document. The contract was approved by FBI leadership in August 2023. Strategic Solutions Group was paid $847,000. According to procurement records, they delivered a 23-page PowerPoint presentation. That's $36,826 per slide. Director Patel, does that strike you as fiscally responsible? The mathematical precision was devastating. Roy had reduced a questionable contract to its most absurd unit cost, exposing the waste in undeniable numerical terms. Patel attempted deflection. Congressman, complex organizational assessments require significant expertise. Let me help you with some context, Roy cut in, his voice sharpening. Strategic Solutions Group has no prior federal contracting history, no expertise in law enforcement, no relevant credentials in FBI operations. But they do have one interesting characteristic. He paused for effect. Their managing partner donated $250,000 to political causes aligned with the previous FBI director. Does that clarify why they received an $847,000 no-bid contract? The implication crashed through the hearing room. Roy wasn't just exposing waste. He was documenting potential corruption. But Roy was just beginning his systematic destruction of Patel's fiscal credibility. He turned to page 7 of his binder. Page 7. Transportation expenses. In fiscal year 2024, the FBI spent $3.2 million on private jet charters. Not for witnesses in protective custody. Not for emergency prisoner transport. For FBI executives traveling to conferences and meetings. Roy looked up from his documents. Director Patel, can you explain why FBI leadership needs private jets when commercial flights and government aircraft are readily available? Patel's discomfort was now visible. Travel decisions are made based on operational efficiency. Operational efficiency? Roy repeated incredulously. Let me give you some specifics. March 14, 2024. FBI executives chartered a private jet from Washington to Miami for a law enforcement conference. Cost, $47,000. A commercial first-class ticket for the same route. $800. That's a 5,750% markup for operational efficiency. The percentage calculation landed like a mathematical bomb. Roy had just proven that FBI leadership was spending nearly 60 times more than necessary for travel convenience. That single trip costs more than the annual salary of an FBI field agent, Roy continued, his voice rising with controlled outrage. While agents in the field are using 10-year-old equipment and working in outdated facilities, FBI executives are flying private jets to conferences. Is that your version of fiscal stewardship? Republican members who had been supportive of Patel began shifting uncomfortably. Democratic members started taking notes. Recognizing that Roy was doing their opposition research for them with devastating effectiveness, but Roy had 80 more pages to go. He flipped through his binder with prosecutorial momentum. Page 23. Facilities and accommodations. The FBI spent $1.7 million on hotel stays for a 3-day leadership retreat in Napa Valley. Let me repeat that. $1.7 million for 3 days. That's $5,667 per day for a strategic planning session. Patel attempted another deflection. Leadership development requires appropriate environments. Appropriate environments? Roy interrupted sharply. The average room rate for that retreat was $2,800 per night. The FBI booked the entire resort, including its 3 Michelin-star restaurant, spa facilities, and private vineyard tours. Director Patel, can you explain how vineyard tours contribute to FBI operational effectiveness? The absurdity was now undeniable. While Patel promised fiscal responsibility, Roy was documenting luxury expenditures that would embarrass a Fortune 500 company, let alone a federal law enforcement agency. Roy turned to page 34, his momentum building. Here's where it gets really interesting. The FBI has a category called Consulting and Advisory Services. In fiscal year 2024, this category consumed $7.3 million. I've analyzed every contract in this category. He looked directly at Patel. Want to know what I found? The rhetorical question hung in the air ominously. 68% of these contracts went to firms with no competitive bidding process. 43% went to firms with no prior federal experience. And here's my favorite statistic. 17 contracts totaling $12.7 million produced literally nothing. No reports, no deliverables, no work product. Just $12.7 million in taxpayer money paid for services never rendered. The hearing room erupted in whispers. Roy had just documented systematic waste that potentially constituted fraud. Director Patel, you've promised to eliminate waste at the FBI. Can you explain why the Bureau was already paying millions for services it never receives? Patel's face had gone pale. He gripped the witness table, clearly unprepared for this level of forensic examination. Congressman, I would need to review those specific contracts. You've had months to prepare for this hearing, Roy shot back, his Texas accent sharpening with frustration. These aren't obscure line items buried in classified budgets. This is basic financial management. And you're telling this committee you can't explain where $12.7 million went. The devastating point was clear. Patel promised FBI reform but couldn't account for basic expenditures. Roy flipped to page 51. Let's talk about training expenses. The FBI allocated $23.4 million for professional development and training in fiscal year 2024. Sounds reasonable, right? Except when you examine the details. He pulled out another document. The FBI paid $340,000 to a leadership consultant who conducted a 2-day seminar on authentic communication strategies. They paid $890,000 for a diversity and inclusion facilitation that consisted of mandatory training sessions featuring concepts you yourself have criticized as woke ideology. And they paid $1.2 million for wellness and mindfulness coaching. Roy looked up from his documents with barely concealed disgust. Director Patel, you've promised to eliminate woke programming from the FBI, but you're asking this committee to confirm you as director of an agency that spent $1.2 million on wellness coaching while field agents can't afford body cameras. The hypocrisy was now explicit. Patel campaigned against wasteful FBI programs while being unable to explain or stop the waste. Page 67, Roy continued relentlessly. Technology and equipment purchases. This is perhaps the most disturbing section. The FBI spent $8.3 million on software licensing and subscriptions for programs that duplicate free or low-cost alternatives. They spent $4.7 million on office furniture for headquarters renovations while field offices operate with equipment from 2010. He pulled out photographs. These are actual FBI field offices. Broken chairs. Computers running Windows 7. Evidence storage in cardboard boxes. While headquarters bought $3,400 ergonomic chairs and $8,900 conference tables. The visual evidence was damning. Roy had documented a federal agency that spent lavishly on executive comfort while field agents worked in deteriorating conditions. Director Patel, can you explain this spending priority? Can you justify executive luxury while agents investigate crimes with inadequate equipment? Patel attempted one more deflection. Budget allocations involve complex prioritization processes. No, Roy's voice cracked like a whip. Budget allocations involve choices. Someone chose private jets over field equipment. Someone chose luxury retreats over operational resources. Someone chose no-bid consulting contracts over agent support. And you're asking this committee to put you in charge of making those choices while you can't explain the choices already made. Roy gathered his papers. His final question loaded with devastating simplicity. Director Patel, I have 87 pages documenting FBI fiscal mismanagement, wasteful contracts, luxury spending, and millions in unaccounted expenditures. You've promised fiscal responsibility, but you can't explain a single line item I presented today. How can this committee trust you to manage a $10 billion agency when you can't account for $847,000? The silence in the hearing room was absolute. Patel sat frozen, his prepared talking points useless against Roy's documented evidence. No amount of rhetoric could counter receipts, contracts, and spreadsheets showing systematic waste. I'll have to get back to you with detailed responses, Patel finally managed. You've had months to prepare, Roy stated flatly. You've testified for hours about reform and accountability, but when confronted with actual evidence of FBI waste, you have no answers. That's not leadership, Director Patel. That's incompetence. Within minutes of the hearing's conclusion, social media erupted. Roy Destroys Patel began trending as clips of the fiscal interrogation went viral. Conservative fiscal hawks praised Roy's documented takedown. Government accountability groups immediately filed records requests based on Roy's evidence. The Financial Times reported, Congressman presents 87 pages of documented FBI waste. Nominee has no explanations. Even some Trump allies acknowledged the damage. Roy asked fair questions about spending. Patel needs better answers, one Republican senator noted privately. By evening, the Government Accountability Office announced an immediate audit of FBI contracting and expenditures based on Roy's documented findings. 3 Republican senators declared they needed explanations before supporting Patel's confirmation. Chip Roy had accomplished something remarkable. He had destroyed an FBI director nominee not with rhetoric or partisan attacks, but with receipts, spreadsheets, and documented evidence of the very fiscal mismanagement Patel claimed he would fix. The Texas congressman had proven that sometimes the most devastating weapon in Washington isn't a sound bite. It's an accountant with 87 pages of evidence and the determination to read every single line.